Good morning or good afternoon or good, really, it's so early. I should be asleep according to wherever you are, because I know we've got Donna joining us. Donna, what time is it where you are?
It's 5:05 here in Dominica.
Bless you for joining us today. Jenny and I are in the same time zone. It's 10:05 a.m. for us. Welcome, everyone. I just want to welcome everyone that's listening live. And also, if you're watching on catch up later, welcome. Let us know where you're listening in from, because I'd really like to hear from you and your experiences of suffering as part of the human condition. I'm sure you've all got some views along the way. I think my husband Carl is likely to join us a bit later on. But before we get going, let's just welcome Jennie Lowes and Donna Marie. I've had you both on my show before. Oh, we've got a lovely like from somebody already. That's, you know, one of those heart-based ones. Isn't that lovely? We've got Jay Atkinson joining us from the UK saying, morning, ladies. Morning. I think this is going to have a really kind of twinkly and kind of serene feel, but also kind of get us deep down. So if I can just talk with you first, Jenny, just for a moment. What's new since we last had you on the show? What do you think of this? Is suffering a necessary part of the human condition as a title?
Well, when you first put the title, when you said it was what it was going to be about, I started to ponder on whether it was a necessary part of the human condition. Yeah. And it seems that all of us at some stage in our lives suffer some kind of physical, emotional, psychological or spiritual kind of suffering, although I think they are all interlinked in one way or another. Yep. And what seems to be the difference is people reconciling with that suffering and making kind of comfort and peace in it somehow, and somehow managing to turn kind of that storm around and come out of the storm a different person. And in my own personal kind of life, and also with clients, I've seen people go through immense suffering that you couldn't even possibly kind of imagine that someone could go through that much suffering and pain. And the difference in the way in which a person deals with it tends to do a lot with their kind of pre-programming from childhood, but also kind of their spiritual stance on why suffering is there, and that polarity of we have to have suffering because without it we wouldn't have peace and happiness. You know, it's like where is that polarity? But it does seem to me that in this modern day and age, in the way that we live, there is a lot of unnecessary suffering on top of kind of the necessary suffering that we all go through, because everybody suffers loss. Hopefully most people suffer love at the same time. Most people suffer kind of grief and bereavement. Most people go through some kind of physical condition that causes them suffering. It's that extended period of suffering that I don't think that is a necessary part. I think probably suffering is in some way maybe to teach us the lesson that we need to learn, or to guide us in a direction that's more for our higher good. Yeah. And I was thinking about this in terms of like people with chronic pain, because chronic illness and chronic pain is kind of a real suffering that people, it's very hard to explain to someone if they've never experienced that. Yeah. But again, there's things that can be done to help that kind of condition, or at least the way in which we deal with it psychologically, emotionally and spiritually. And I think it's the spiritual connection that most people actually miss. And that's what gives very long, prolonged periods of suffering. That's my kind of feeling.
That's a really good introduction. And J. Gold Atkinson is saying, wow, orbs crossing Jenny's screen.
It's dust.
But isn't it nice how Jay has reframed your dust?
Yeah, amazing. It's orbs.
I've got black flying orbs going across mine, Jay. It actually flies, but Thank you.
We got mosquitoes going to start flying about.
So, Donna, yeah, I guess like Jenny's got a nursing background, and is an energy worker and a nurse. You've done nursing for years and years, and you're also an integrative health practitioner. You're coming at your experience of trauma or suffering is a bit different, isn't it? Do you want to give us a little bit of an intro and also your thoughts on this title?
Yeah, so I mean, I am sort of kind of going under the umbrella of Donna Marie, the healing adoptee at the moment, and that's pretty much since the sort of around the time I was speaking to you, Louisa.
Yeah.
So I've come through recently in the last year and a half, what's known as adoption trauma. So I'm adopted. I'm an adoptee. I was adopted, relinquished as a baby, had just so much trauma. Just a lot of trauma. I was transracial adoptee, black in a white family. Love, thankfully, unconditional love, but a lot of trauma. And I didn't know that it was anything to do with the separation of my birth mother until 2 years ago, when I also didn't know that there was lots of other adoptees that had gone through what I had.
Yeah.
And now I'm in a community of hundreds of thousands of adoptees all around the world. And for the first time in 2 years, I've felt really 100% validated.
Wow.
Like, God, this is real. It always was real. I'm not crazy. I'm not mad. But the suffering that I am going through or have been going through now with this, because it's as if everything's come to the surface.
Yeah.
But with that, I've been learning energy work as well and doing my own Reiki, doing on myself.
Yeah.
Don't know where I'd be without that. And actually through this suffering, which is so intense now, I've also coached people, done therapy with people and helped them with their trauma without knowing the full depth of mine. But I've had to put all my tools down and stop and deal with myself. And I have to say that this is a really important topic for me. It's a really, it needs to be understood, because throughout this suffering, I'm also, what I've been calling it is painfully beautiful. It's painful, but it's beautiful. I mean, Dominica, how did I get here? How did I get here? I don't even really know how I got here. It's like a miracle. There are miracles around me everywhere. And the more that I'm exploring this suffering, the more miracles I'm exploring as well that are coming to me. So it feels as though this suffering is almost part and parcel of the process to get to the other end. Yeah. But wow. And it gives me more understanding of others when I do go back into coaching, because this depth has been like, I don't know if you can get any deeper than this. Like, I didn't know for 50 years as a coach myself what was really wrong. And now I do. So I'm really happy to explore this.
Wow. Well, I noticed a real shift, like from what you were saying from like 2 years ago. Like 2 years ago, you, I'm guessing from what you've just shared, you hadn't really got into the depths of it, and you were able to see the situation of adoption, and you were very sort of much in a practical how to help people with the things they were going through and how to cope with like meeting your family and things like that, and dealing with the stories of people's family. And it feels like you've gone really into it. Well, I want to share something actually that somebody said to me just recently, because I was like, why do I keep repeating these patterns? Only I seem to go deeper into these patterns each time. Why am I doing that? And why, why isn't it getting easier? And my very good friend Dee, who's been on the show and will be back, Dee Brody, if you're listening, Dee, hello. She said it's because you can deal with it, that it's coming up now. And all of a sudden I was like, oh.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, I think it's when we're ready. It's when I realize now that I've just been and I still am now in many ways, protecting myself from many things. And I've been doing that. I mean, we're so clever, really, what we're doing. I've been and I know why. You know, it's like this was, if I was 20 or having my son coming through this, when I was pregnant, coming through this, when I was, you know, even finding some of my birth family coming through this, you know, it would have been really, I mean, my relationship now is thankfully okay, but this isn't easy. And I think yours was the last interview I did before before I just thought, I can't do this anymore. I need to figure out me now, because I put myself out again as a protector. I think to protect myself, I'll put everything out that actually is for me, but I'll put it out to everybody else instead. Because that's what I do. That's how and it is actually a healing thing to do. And I want to continue doing that, but I have to sort myself out now first. But I think it is a big difference since then, Louisa, a big difference.
Wow. I love that you're calling yourself a protector, because actually I wrote a word down as you were talking, that was courage. Like the courage to go on the journey you're going on. And I would apply this to you as well, Jennie, actually. When I like chat with you and I hear about what you do and how you help people, I think very much that you're a protector of people and you have the courage to do that. And I think it's funny, isn't it, how we often do the things that we maybe need to do for ourselves.
Well, I think that's very obvious to me as well. All through my life, I've always been very much, I want to help other people as much as possible. And I'm also very good at helping other people, but I'm not so good at helping myself. And I think the best healers or the best therapists and health workers are ones that have experienced some kind of trauma, pain, suffering, and are either still processing it. Because I don't know if I've ever met someone that's 100% healed and that's 100% past everything. I think the true kind of healing comes with recognizing why you feel a certain way and trying to unravel that and unpick it right back to the beginning where it starts from, and also recognize that some of that suffering isn't your own. Like that. I mean, I don't know much of your story, Donna, and thank you for sharing that today. But I assume your biological parents also must have gone through some suffering at the time that they made the decision to have you put up for adoption. And I think they're recognizing that ancestral kind of pattern of suffering is part of getting through that and healing it, really. And I am a big believer that we pass down our kind of things that we need to heal through generations. And I heard once somebody say it takes 3 generations to break like a repeated pattern. It's like on the 3rd generation that 3rd generation has the opportunity to break it, or it just carries on and continues.
Wow. Oh my God. I mean, that ties into, I mean, I want to ask you at some point, I like, have you gone back in your ancestry, like 3 generations of your birth family? Anyone?
Well, interestingly, yes. So not me personally, but my aunt has really dug quite deep into my maternal family line. And there's definitely a clear institutionalized people, women that had children out of marriage, and the children were then, not on the family tree. They got moved out. So there's all through the maternal line as well, mainly.
Wow.
So and that's through hundreds of years, like going back, looking at births and deaths records and the information that she's got. So It looks like there was a bit of a family repetition down the maternal line in some ways.
And what about you, Donna? Have you found out some of the history beyond your birth parents and also your adopted parents? Because I'm guessing you pick up patterns from them as well, right?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. I'm so like my adopted mom. Worry about everything. Just do. I've got some real traits of hers, and I believe I'm becoming more like my birth mother, because my birth mother's brother tells me she's passed now. I never met my birth mother, and I never met my birth father, but I do know that there was a deep-rooted abandonment within my paternal biological father's side. Deep abandonment, especially with him and his side, and then his father. And Yeah, I mean, I don't know too much about the history on my adopted side. I'm kind of going through what what Jenny said, like, the real coming through is going through the trauma and it coming up and that's really where I'm at the moment, is like just trying to absorb all of this.
Yeah.
At 50.
Well,
I'll get through that first, and then I'll go back and have a deeper look.
Well, one thing I noticed straight away is we're all around the same age, and we're all expat women from the UK. We're all living abroad. We're all mums as well, and we're all, dare I say, a little bit on the witchy and healer side. We've all got that sort of coach, sort of inquiry side. This is really lovely. And Sarah, who's watching, Sarah Energetic, she's saying painfully beautiful. Love that. I do too. This actually feels painfully beautiful. It feels like I'm feeling all hot flushy, not from menopause type things, but I've actually feeling lots of tingles all over. We've got Gillian joining us from windy, sunny Scotland. Jay Atkinson is saying big love to you, Donna. Thank you so much for your words, and amen to that, Jenny. Me too. So there's a lot of absolute resonance going on. Feels like something quite magical is about to happen. So yeah, I mean, where does that bring us right now? Pete, who's joining us from the other side of Portugal, saying he's a cool age to be. So thanks for that. What's most apparent for you then right now, Donna, in terms of like suffering, and the human condition? Like, presumably 2 years ago you had an idea of the human condition, and now it sounds like that shifted. What's really coming up for you at the moment?
Like purpose, like what is the reason I had to sort of like put my tools down and stop sort of like giving to everyone else is because I was questioning the authenticity behind it. I was questioning the purpose. I was questioning the intent. Everything felt like it just crumbled in me. Like what I need to build myself up and I'm starting to now figure out who I am, like under all of this. And that's I think where the beautiful thing is coming, because it's like I'm realizing that I was always extremely intuitive as a child growing up. But what I did was I internalized that as something being wrong with me. So actually throughout my childhood, I was picking up on everything, like just everything, but just and probably getting extremely paranoid and worried and thinking I was wrong. Well, now I'm like, actually, I'm right. There's nothing wrong. I'm coming through this whole putting myself together, feeling there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with any of us. This is a journey that is almost like we're all covered up. I feel like we've all been covered up from the minute we're here. But it's just that my cover had to come off. I mean, some adoptees' covers never come off. I mean, they never even find out they're adopted, some people. But I think because I've been searching, like this intuition has been searching for self all along. Self has been searching for self all along. Yeah. And so what do I feel and think about all of this? Where I am now is that I feel as though this is a really important part of this life's process. And I want everyone to start sort of taking these covers off, but sometimes they're not as obvious. For me, they become quite obvious to me. I mean, they were actually there. I feel a little bit angry still because the narrative around adoption is fooling adoptees, adoptee mothers, and birth parents. And it's still going on. And none of us really know that there's so much trauma involved in that separation. So so much. It's that, and there's no therapist in the UK for adoption trauma.
Seriously?
Yeah, you have to be on. They are changing it. They're trying to change it, but you have to be on Ofsted. You have to go through Ofsted to get support as an adoptee. When you've got all these
schools need to get involved, like Ofsted, isn't that just about schools?
Yeah, exactly. It's really wrong, really wrong, you know, especially when you consider the amount of help and support that there is, like in America, that I've reached out for and stuff. But if you go officially in the UK, you can't get support. Yet there's people crying out to help get this cover off. That doesn't feel right, that doesn't feel part of the human condition almost, you know. It's so I don't know if that answers anything, but I think I'm just sort of exploring all of this, and also questioning this healing aspect. I love to go out and do things that are going to help others, but am I really helping myself? Am I doing it for myself? You know, and then I have a problem with that, and I think, well, that's quite selfish. But then I'm like, well, no, it comes naturally for me to help others. But I'm questioning that. Like, where does this come from? Where does this gift come from? But all I know is it helps me, and in turn, it helps others.
Yes.
So I'm not going to question it too much right now. I'm not going to down tools anymore. I'm just going to do what shines that light inside me, because that's what I'm realizing is what's driving what's good. And that's what that's where I'm at now. I'm trying not to listen to here. I'm more listening to my heart and what this feeling inside my belly has been telling me since I was born, actually. I'm starting to listen.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's answered your question.
It's loads more things that I want to talk about, which was always going to happen. Like the first thing that I and like jump in, Jenny, if there's something that you want to add, because I'm sure you're listening quite intently as well from your experience and listening. But what occurs to me is, you know, when you were saying, you know, you had instincts, you had intuition, and you weren't able to express them. I wonder if, you know, if that was because people didn't believe that there was such a thing as the trauma of being adopted or the suffering that might come up. Or was it that people were saying, oh, no, that doesn't exist? Because I know that growing up within my family and within the education system that I was raised in, I always felt that just being intuitive was a bit of an issue. And if ever I said, oh, there's such and such going on here, it's like, don't be daft. You know, that doesn't exist. And just the very sort of almost having your personality, what's the word? Not disempowered, but a core part of who you are, like your identity, being told that's not true, or that's not right, or that's not this or that or the other, or that it doesn't exist, it's in your head. It's kind of it's a form of gaslighting, isn't it? And I don't think people do it deliberately necessarily, apart from those people that do, you know, that just want to shut you up. So I immediately, when you were talking about that, had my own reaction thinking, but I love the idea of the cover and the uncovering. And I love that you love doing these things to help others, and that you've got this inquiry about selfishness, because that's something Carl wants to join us now. That's something that I think we are going to talk about on another show as well, because I actually think it's good to, you know, for us to consider self, because like, how can we become the best that we can be unless we do invest in ourselves a little bit and do what brings us joy? When we bring joy to ourselves, doesn't it help us to bring joy to others? I don't know.
I always feel better. Like I did a video on the park. I wasn't even expecting it to really go anywhere. But I looked at it. I thought, oh, that's okay. That's good. I like that. I'll send it. And actually, I felt better doing it. After I'd done it, I felt happier. And then when I sent it, it made everyone else feel good. And that made me feel better as well. And I thought, well, that's a good start to the day, right?
Yeah.
For me and for everyone. So, yeah.
Jenny, did you have something you wanted to add? And then I'll bring Carl on as well.
Well, I think about the intuitive thing. Now I realise I was very intuitive as a child, but of course, as a child, I didn't really realise it. I had an imaginary friend that I was quite happy to talk to all the time. And when you're in that moment, you're in that conscious moment as a child, especially up to the kind of age of probably 7, where you're not into kind of bringing in anything from the past or present. You're just in that conscious heart-based moment where you feel those voices of intuition talking to you. And I also was incredibly sensitive. So like you, I could feel everybody's energy, and I still can. I can walk into a room, or I can tell by the way somebody talks, like that they're annoyed, or, you know, I can. And some people aren't very skilled in that, are they? Some people can't see like when someone's body language is wrong. I mean, I've been quite surprised recently of lots of like viral videos that I look at straight away, and I think that's completely staged. Like, you can see it's staged, it's acted, and all the comments, or 99% of the comments, are, you know, believing that it's real. I just can't understand why people don't feel that, or can't sense it in that way. But I think the reason why we're not taught to nurture that gift is because society almost tells us that it doesn't exist. We're told about our 5 senses all the time, but we're not told about the 6th sense. And it's almost like it's an extra sense. But if you took away all the other 5 senses, the one that would be, you know, there is your intuition. And I do believe that everybody has the ability to be intuitive. It's just that we're completely blocked, or people are blocked. And the more we unblock ourselves and release that trauma, or that energetic kind of signature that's sat there in our different meridians or energy centers, once we start clearing that, that's when we start to have a lot of realizations. That's when we can really start to heal, and then we can really help others, you know, once you've gone through that process. And my career, all my life, I wanted to be a nurse since I was very small, was always directed towards helping others. And I realized quite recently that part of that was so that I didn't tackle my own stuff, because I knew it was painful. Like Donna was saying, it's like beautifully painful, but it was easier to entertain myself with helping someone else than it was to help myself. And it's probably only been in the last 5 years that I've started to really recognize that in myself. And also I realized that not helping people, because I had a period where I stopped nursing and I went into recruitment, and I was still helping people because I was helping people find jobs and like start a new life in the UK, but I wasn't helping people in the sense that I was so used to. And I felt a bit redundant during that time. And I know now that actually helping people is part of me. It's why I was here. And I also think that any trauma or suffering that I've been through has helped me be a better carer or healer or a better practitioner, because you can have that empathy with somebody. Especially, you can have empathy for people for things that you haven't experienced. But if you've experienced it yourself, the person doesn't even need to explain what it's like. It's like, you know, if someone's experienced a miscarriage, for example, I don't think any woman needs to explain to another woman what that actually feels like. You know, they know because they've experienced it themselves. And the biggest challenge we have now, I think, is to teach our youth and the younger generation is that they really do have the ability to use their intuition and to help guide them through life, rather than relying on their other senses that are telling them otherwise, you know.
Amen to that.
Much.
Hello, Carl.
Hi. I'm such a lucky fella. I am in the company of awesome women this morning. I recommend this. Louisa does this to me. I try and go and get on with something, and then she puts the Barefoot Broadcast on with amazing guests like yourselves, and I can't keep working. I've got to come down and join in. So if that's all right, it's lovely to be here. Great to meet you, Donna. I'm really moved by what you were saying earlier on. Always great to chat with you, Jenny. And like you, I've got orbs, Jenny. They're floating around. All these things that have been prompted by what you've been saying.
May I just add? We often go through our life and we forget our story, and actually being reminded of adoption, Donna, it occurs to me that your mum, like Carl's mum, was adopted, and we know nothing about your ancestry, but you know a lot about the consequences of being adopted by somebody doesn't talk about it.
Absolutely. And it's my life too. I mean, without wanting to sound too entitled or bratish about it, if your parent doesn't want, and I totally respect my mum for the position she's taken, it's her journey and her life, and she must do with it as she wishes. But the children of those people who are dealing with adoption are also having their experience of their family affected by that. So, you know, I respect my mum completely with how she wants to do with it. It's her life as a human being and her experience to do with it as she wishes. And I've also got my own issues, if you like, about it, and that's why it connects for me so brilliantly with what you were saying, Jenny, about for some reason it's just like beautiful, serendipitous timing. I was thinking because of a number of things that happened to me yesterday about childhood superpowers, which is I think what you're talking about, Jenny. It's like, and we've got a friend, Jenny in central Portugal, who's written a book and guide for children to work on their superpowers. And I think she means it more generally. Children are so much more able, talented, gifted than we give them credit for, and then therefore they give themselves credit for. And I think individually, like you, Jenny, with your imaginary friend and your intuitive, empathic, psychic ability as a child, a lot of us had that. And I thought of it in exactly those terms last night and this morning, maybe this morning when I was out walking the dogs. It's like my superpower, and connecting with what the theme of the show is about, came from pain and suffering as a kid, not understanding what was going on, which is nothing special for me. All kids, I think, I think it's true that life is essentially painful at times, and the suffering bit is the transformational path or journey that comes with it. And so for me, when I was born into explosive parents, the world of explosive parents, the superpower I developed, which I only see it as that now, it was a survival strategy as a child. But it was like, Jesus, these people are just about to go off at any minute about something or other. And you know what it's like when you're a kid? It's like something really, mundane. But obviously that's just the lid being lifted on a load of other stuff that's there for these grown-ups in your life. So the thing I had to develop was like being attuned to their emotional state, just like you are, Jenny. As you said, and I'm sure you are too, Donna, and I know Louisa's the same.
Definitely.
It's like, you walk into a room because the room you walked into was your living room or your kitchen, and there are these people simmering or about to explode, or, okay, they're calm today. This is nice. I can sit down and just go about my business. But in that sort of situation, nothing unique for me. I mean, it was unique for me, but it's the experience of many, many millions of people and children, is to get good at reading those signals. And then that becomes your way of life, doesn't it? That you can't not see life like that. And you become a nurse, or you become a social worker, or a job that, like, okay, I could use that skill now. This is what I do naturally. And I was filming yesterday with just, if I could do a massive twatty name drop now, I was filming with A Place in the Sun yesterday with TV people. And like TV, and this is no criticism of TV people, it's the world of make-believe, isn't it? And pretending things. And these quickly made TV shows are all about creating a false image by bringing bits of footage together. Not false, but like a constructed, fabricated image. And that's the problem with TV, isn't it? It's like I was there with people who are all having to be nice to each other to get this job done. And my guts were churning because it was not real. It wasn't authentic until I started talking about ceramic and confectionery fallacy of the area we were filming in, and we all became human beings, and we started having a laugh, and we had the job to do, and we started having a laugh. And this is, I just thought, if my feature here on this show is meant to be about a news item of some sort, transformational news. Here's a transformational news flash, kids, of whatever age you are. If you're a child, I don't know why you'd be watching this, but if you're being made to watch this by a parent with you at the moment, or if you're a child of 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, or 80, what was your superpower as a child? What did you develop as a survival strategy that then probably became quite useful to you in relationships, in your job, that you're still using now? And furthermore, what can you give yourself credit for? That's the thing now, isn't it? It's like, it really relates to how I understood what you were saying, Donna, about the survival strategy, and how that survival strategy can then be uncovered, and you can bless yourself and the world and forgive yourself and the world for having that, and then it can become a gift to the world at this stage. That's the transformational part now, isn't it? It's like, I'm like this, and I can give that out. Like you were saying, Donna, first thing in the morning. It's a good way to. It's a great way to start the day.
Wow. I feel like we're really poised to respond to you, but and I want to hear more from the ladies.
Yeah, sorry.
But no. That was really valuable. Yeah. But we got loads of comments coming in as well, and I think let's get those out, because I think more things is going to, it's going to come up. So we've got a comment from Owen Lloyd Martin, who's joining us, and he's saying, listening and lurking. Sounds like I need today's show. Thank you, you beautiful souls.
I've got to jump in. Yes, you do. And we are in communication. And I'm asking you especially, Owen, what was yours? Because I know you're the
you
same.
must have a superpower.
Yes, you're the man today based on the thing you developed as a kid, which can be a superpower and not just a survival strategy. So yes, you did need to be here today.
I watched a video the other day, and it made me think a little bit, actually. And it was a psychotherapist that was talking about being an empath, and it said actually there is no such thing as being an empath. I don't agree with this, by the way, because I think there are empaths that haven't had to be hypervigilant. They said you just lived through a hypervigilant state and became, like you said, Carl, you could tune into the frequency and think, this is going to kick off now, I'm going to disappear and go and play with my cars somewhere from a very early age. But I think that there are people that already have the skill of empathy or are deep empaths that also have lived in hypervigilant states that might make them even more sensitive to energies and things like that. But I don't necessarily think that you have to have lived in a hypervigilant state to be an empath. But this is what this psychologist was saying. I thought it was interesting.
Wow. Makes sense. Yeah.
Hypervigilance. Love that.
Yes.
Well, I don't love it, but
no.
I mean, I was adopted, and compared to a lot of adoptees, I was actually very lucky, as in my adopted parents adopted me for me, not for them. There's a lot of adopted parents that they've lost, they can't have children of their own, and they really are trying to have their own child, actually. And obviously it's never going to be their own child. So things start to unravel, and it can be awful in the home growing up. For me, I had love, and there was lots of other children there that also didn't have their families, although they did see their families. I didn't. I think that for me, the intuition that it was occurring from a pre-verbal age, like it was, I think I was so intuitive around the actual separation, but I couldn't speak. We can't speak at 3 months. We can't. I used to cry. My birth mother says I cried and cried and cried. Well, when I got to my adopted parents, I didn't cry. I was silent.
Wow.
So all these years, I'm like, wow, Mom, I was where I was meant to be. How happy I was. I believed that. I'm glad I believe that. Because, I'm glad I believe that. And actually, I think I'll always let my mom and dad believe that. But now I actually think I was frozen. Yeah. Because it was the words frozen baby that woke me up as part of my adoption trauma. It's like it hit me. Frozen baby hit me. So I feel that this intuition was coming in for me. Like, but I couldn't verbalize it. And then I'd feel guilty about verbalizing it when I could verbalize it. So you lock it in.
Yeah.
But it's still a power that's going on inside. But what's it doing? I think in some ways, my superpower was imagining and daydreaming. I think you call it disassociating. But I was extremely good at just taking myself away from reality and going somewhere else and just creating something else that was different, that was better. And I realized that was a superpower, because actually I was manifesting good things. And they did. Like, for example, I dreamed about being on the theatre at the Playhouse. Well, I got on. I dreamed about getting through the National Youth Theatre in London. Well, I got in.
That's manifesting, isn't it?
Yeah. But it was in my room, locked in my head on my own, or in my, that I was doing all of this, So intuition, imagination, disassociating, whatever. I mean, power.
My concern with this is this pain suffering thing again in our society, and what you were saying about hypervigilance. It's a shame, isn't it, that the hypervigilance forms us rather than it being a self-expressed natural ability and a loved and respected role in society of the shamanic parts of the community. It is it's hidden, isn't it? It's an occult thing. What we're talking about is not talking about, loose women aren't having this chat at the moment. They might be, but and in years to come, they might have this sort of conversation. But we're not generally in a world, are we, where it's seen as hypervigilance and trauma and a kid's adjusting weirdly because they've got an imaginary friend. These things are completely natural to sane people, and they are completely insane to a mad world, which is where we are at the moment. I think that's, it's like it is painful to be a human being in some ways in that sort of Buddhistic sense, but we don't need to add suffering to that in the way that we seem to be by locking down, it's a carefully chosen word, but locking down the abilities of children and their full bandwidth of being, only to have it come out now as depression, anxiety, and all manner of shit. That we all look at, even the people who don't believe what we're talking about this morning or can't see what the symptoms of it are in society.
Yeah. May I just share some of the comments, because we've got lots of different people sharing different ideas and customs and stuff from different parts of the world. So we've got Gillian joining us. I have an Egyptian friend, an erstwhile flatmate. She shared a lot from her Islamic beliefs and traditions. She said that anyone adopted into another family always kept their birth family name and are clearly told that they were born in another family and that they are chosen into a new family. Obviously, that's how it's meant to happen, and I'm sure not always in practice. Then Pete is joining us. He's saying one of the reasons you have a list of names in Portugal is that the rural communities were so poor they would leave their baby on the church doorstep with a very odd name. They could then collect them when they were ready to work on the farm and pay their keep. It keeps some of the problems we have in context. Wow, I didn't know that. Yeah. The Global Nobles are here saying hi to Owen and to others. Sarah's saying lots coming up for me on this, Carl. That ability to diffuse tension as a superpower from childhood experience has also made me realize I can choose close relationships that don't keep me on guard. Oh my goodness.
Well,
yes.
they were at our house, and I am so not on guard in Sarah's company that I fell asleep while we were talking.
Twice.
So we are so comfortable, Sarah. I see you, except when I'm asleep.
The Global Nobles are saying superpower as a child of divorce is to be perfect so that there's no way your parents... Oh, gosh.
Wow.
Can you read it out? I'm just feeling really overwhelmed by
No, I can't either. Can Donna or...
Yeah, superpower as a child of divorce is to be perfect so that there's no way your parents' marriage breakdown can be your fault. Or better yet, if you are really perfect, perhaps they will stay.
Bless you.
Oh, gosh. Bless you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
When I heard you say frozen baby, Donna, I think so many people are frozen at some point in their childhood. That kind of fall from grace, that feeling of separation.
Yeah.
I've always felt that sense of separation. Not really because of my parents, I don't think, but that feeling, I feel like I remember what it was like before I came here. And I've always had that kind of longing for that sense of connection. But I think most people at some level feel frozen or separated at some point. And I feel for every baby and person that feels like that. And I guess it's just because there's that part of me inside as well.
I think when I look back now, because I'm going through my timeline and really looking back at not just the traumas, the gifts. I'm trying to look at the gifts that have come out of all this as well. But I became a children's entertainer, and I became a really good one because, and I love, and it's like I feel I've always been aiming to heal that child within myself and make her smile and make her happy, and and in the process I'm making now online making lots of children happy, and it's wonderful. It's a wonderful gift that's come from this. I think is the frozen baby, because the frozen baby I'm not a practicing hypnotherapist, because you couldn't hypnotize me very easily. And I'm like, there's an issue here. I can't do this. You've got to break through me first before I start putting this. Although everyone said I was really good, my voice and everything.
Yeah.
But it was through one of the Facebook groups that someone was saying about, oh, have you tried the frozen baby practice or whatever? And it just hit me. I was like, inside, like, did you then, Louisa? Like,
yeah,
I had to know more about whatever it was that was the frozen baby. Within 5 minutes of talking to the hypnotherapist, Steve, I've done a video with him since.
Must be.
And because he within two minutes he was telling me he was adopted,
right?
And he's created this practice. He's called it the frozen baby, where you go in and he helps to thaw.
Oh my
because
goodness!
He explains that it's been frozen from the core,
from
himself and his own child. And I'm like sitting there on this Zoom call with this adoptee, like, oh. And he said, there's groups out there with adoptees, Donna. I helped someone doing that. I was like, I didn't have a clue. I did not.
Oh wow,
that's amazing. Is there a sort of talk down? That's the wrong phrase, but is there a process for perfect teenagers as well for Amy? This idea of of perfecting oneself as a teenager to
the global nobles.
To be craft yourself as that person to not be responsible for your parents breaking up or to try and keep them together. And there must be a similar process, mustn't there, to hold that teenager's hand and say, you don't have to do this.
There's a lot of adoptees.
Sorry,
I was just going to say, just on that, there's a lot of adoptees that they're actually growing up and they're nurturing their adopted parents for the trauma that they experienced, and they're trying to be the baby that they weren't, because they know that they've come from, because they lost their babies or baby, and so they're trying to make it better for them through themselves. I mean, it's awful. It's just like
what a world we live in.
And I can see why a child would do that as well, because I think children are programmed to love their parents. They are absolutely
deep down, they know they'll never be theirs, and then they're deep down, they're intuitive like me, probably from the verbal stage, where they actually know that they're not really what they wanted. They'll never be really what they really wanted. And if their baby did come along, that's what they really wanted. So you never feel, thankfully I didn't feel that. So, but
and it is forgivable though, isn't it? I mean, that's the thing I've learned a lot about humans in the last 20 years or so, is how forgiving people are if you're honest with them. But if the lies are being lived and not spoken about, that's what hurts, isn't it? Because you don't know why there is this strange static all the time, or awkwardness, and people just what they're saying, it doesn't match what you're reading in a way that Jenny's talked about before. And that's really awkward and difficult. And then it might be a terrible day, mightn't there, where that person says, I've got to fess up to you. I've been trying to make you the child I never had. And it'd be like, there'd be tears, and it would be awful, but it would be a freedom, wouldn't it? It'd be a release. You could forgive that.
Yeah, we could just do that if we could.
I think the whole way society is set up is to stop us having those gifts. Actually, I think it is purposely set up. We do everything to suppress that and to prolong suffering in this society. We're not taught how to manage things. We're not taught how to process stuff. We're not taught how to recognize energetic or blockages in ourselves or in others. We're not taught how to actually navigate this life in a way that we shouldn't have to suffer for any extended periods. I think short-term suffering, short-term pain, something can be quite transformational. But we have these people have long periods. Some people have lifetimes full of suffering. And some people have lifetimes full of suffering and still manage to live, don't they? And some people have short periods of suffering, and they aren't able to manage it and to deal with it because they're not given the tools by society to be able to do so. And I think all of us are probably trying to help people to actually recognize in themselves that they can go back and heal stuff that's there or in their ancestral line, even just by recognizing it, acknowledging it, trying to understand what anybody else that was involved in that situation, the viewpoint that they're coming from, or the situation that they're coming from, like back to kind of the adoption scenario where, you know, it can't ever be easy for a mother to give up a child, and there must be trauma there or before you're even born, like before as a baby, Donna, you're even born, there was an immense amount of trauma and suffering, I'm sure, that occurred, that almost now is your thing that you have to process so that you can clear that ancestral blockage and move forward for your sole purpose of why you're actually here. And that must be to help other people that have been in the same situation as you.
Yeah,
you must be here because of that, right?
I think so. And it's full of, you know, my first book that I wrote, chapter, which is when I was in what's called the fog before 2 years ago, I called it Lost and Found, a story of a faith, love and forgiveness. And I will still call my story a story of faith, love and forgiveness, because actually, yeah, you're right. My birth mother was doing initially the first thing she thought was right for me. She didn't know, and there was no one there to explain to her the pain that she was going to go through, because her pain was incredible. And I've only found that out later in life. My adopted parents were doing what they thought was right for me. They were there for love for me. So everyone was trying to do the right thing, you know. So I have actually got a really, I can include all three, the triage, the constellation in my story, with love, faith and forgiveness. And I think that's a really powerful place for me to be, because for the other adoptees that have got all this pain with their adopted parents, with that, you know, they haven't been able to, I've sat with my adopted mom, and there was some things that went on that we've spoken about. And then she's explained her childhood to me, and she used to get locked up in a cupboard. She was an only child, and she was so scared. And, you know, and I understand now that, you know, my mum was doing the best she could with what she had. You know, she really was doing what she can, and she didn't handle things well, but she was trying to help so many children, and things did, you know, she made mistakes.
Yes.
So, and I forgave her. I love her. And, you know, we're much more open as well, but that's a hard thing to do. But I think, yeah, it's a powerful place to be, because there's a lot of love. It came from love. It didn't work well, but the intention was good. And I think if we can see that, like you said, Jenny, if we can see that as part of our healing, see the bigger picture of, you know, because it's really the system that's wrong. The system should have recognized by now, certainly, that this is trauma, and we need to stop doing it, and we need to start doing things differently, because it's but then there's something wicked going on there, isn't there? Because if they really wanted to stop this, they could have done a while ago now, 50 years now, and they're still doing what they're doing, you know, with adoption. And there's a lot of money involved in it now as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's,
same old story, isn't it, really?
I also recognise there's a lot of countries that have been talking about taking children away from parents, you know, when there's a mismatch of ideologies. So there's all sorts of state interference, I think, in terms of how we parent. You
don't take a puppy or a kitten away from its mother for 6 weeks. And they're quite strict on that everywhere.
Typically, right? Yes, greater animal welfare than human welfare in some instances. Yeah,
there's a real reason for that.
Well, I imagine if you gave support to a woman that is in turmoil about whether to keep their baby or not, if they had the right support and they had that 6 weeks and they had that time, and it's the support thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
The birth mother should know as well. Okay, you may still not want to have this child, but for your health and for the baby's health, this needs to be done. You know, this bit of work here needs to be done, and then the transition is going to be good for you and the baby. But that's not understood. They don't realise birth mothers, the statistics of suicides amongst first mothers is not known. But it's through the roof. It's not. There's no support for them in the trauma that it affects them. They really do. All their lives feel that child that they.
Of course.
Yeah. And like you were saying, that one decision, it impacts lots of other people as well, doesn't it? It's like if a mother gave up their first pregnancy or their first child and then consequently had more children, then that loss and that pain and that suffering that she had then would then be impacted on their children and their future generations of children.
But then there's half sister comes along 50 years later, and then it opens up as this like 50 years from that. I mean, there's so much.
Yeah.
These are what ghosts are, aren't they? I mean, in our crazy world, we've got ghosts as a Hollywood, fantastical concept. But those are the real ghosts, aren't they, in our world? Ghosts of unhealed things and beings and people that are in the room, aren't they? They are in the room all the time until distinguished and transformed into something loving and helpful and forgived and compassionate. And before that, they're kind of weaponized, aren't they? And ever present as a spooky influence on the proceedings. And that's in the home and that's in society. That's how we seem to be living. Jenny, going back to your, how the system, and I think Donna, the word you use is, the system is wicked. You can really see that, can't you? You can really, and whether it is purposeful or whether it's like that because we all contribute and hold it up to be like that at the moment, I don't entirely know, but we can all, I'm sure, agree that it's like it's not really working that well, and it's producing nice horrific results until we take it down somehow.
Yeah, we
had diffuse it or whatever it is we're doing.
On last Friday's show, we had Mike and Dee Brody, and we also had Dr. Joe Delaney, and it was Mike that said something like, we don't call out your bullshit, so you don't call out ours. And I think that's one of the things that happens is we're all holding up these systems in place, because if we call out this other kind of level of lies and untruths, we have to make sure that we're really clear ourselves. And so it's like we've all got secrets, or maybe, we, even us four who are talking openly about, revealing things and healing from like secret shames and things like that and guilts and stuff. But, if you think about the world, there's so many bits of shame and guilt and regret, and we just plaster over it and pretend like nothing's
utter nonsense. It's like it's a nonsense world, isn't it? Where you look at it and go, well, that doesn't work and can't work. But, USA, $33 trillion of national debt, just as one example. That is like a fantastical Wizard of Oz thing, isn't it? Upon which a whole country's and the world's security and all sorts of ideas are premised on the absolute nonsense, if you were to look into it at all. And that's just one example of a whole fabric of absolute bullshit that forms the world that these kids with superpowers are being born into. So we kind of better do something about the world they're born into, and maybe that's it. Maybe they are the resistance that are coming to, or the the undoing of that, because they can't keep being quiet or be kept quiet for much longer. And I'm sure all these things that are happening in ideologically and sociologically are expressions of that, as much as we might not like some of them. Kids are trying to push out, aren't they, with some sense of like, this is so messed up. Come on, you lot, we can all do better than this. It's like, no, keep quiet, and just go and talk to your imaginary friend in your room and don't embarrass them.
Oh, bless you. I'm conscious of time because we're all really busy people, and so I just want to read out a couple more last sharings from people, but also think about how we can. I don't think we can close this conversation really, because this is just like the tip of the iceberg. So one thing I'm wondering is if you'd like to come back and we continue this conversation. So we have like a part 1, maybe a part 2, 3, 4, 5, however many as we need, because I think there's a lot in this to unpack. I don't know.
I'm happy for that.
Yeah, I'll be up for that.
The Global Nobles.
It's not an hour conversation, is it really?
No.
What were you thinking?
This is like something that we might start over a weekend. Like we all go and stay in a log cabin one weekend and we just like sit and chat. And then we stop every now and again and we walk off and then we come back and chat some more. That's how I see it. So the Global Nobles were also saying in terms of like parents splitting up and honing your empathic abilities as a child so you can anticipate how to manipulate the situation. I think we all learn that as part of our survival strategy.
It's a different kind of homeschooling.
Yes. Owen saying, my ability to make people laugh maybe was my superpower. However, whilst I say this, it reminds me of the Smokey Robinson tune, Tears of a Clown. Yeah. You've definitely got a lot of that clowning going on, haven't you?
For sure. No, we resonate a lot, me and Owen, with these things.
Yeah. And I'm guessing you've got a bit of clowning as well, Donna, right?
Yeah.
Like child, like entertaining children and things. Sarah's saying this frozen baby concept is huge and the words alone are massive in their effect for all baby consciousness everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes. And then Gillian has also said trauma bonds. Yeah, I agree. I think trauma does bond people. And one of the things that we have noticed so far is that it's bonded some people in silence, you know, like the stuck patterns we all grow up in and often remain in. But it can, like what I see for you, Donna, and your mum, it sounds like you've had some very transforming conversations where your mum was brave enough to face where she maybe made some mistakes. And you know, I know I've always had this opening for me and my mum and my dad to talk quite openly, but I've never got any sense that they felt like they've made any mistakes.
Don't stop though. Don't stop.
And I don't think you have that with your mum so much either, do you?
No.
This is just how it is.
Well, she and I are both perfect. That's quite a difficult standoff.
Yeah.
It's a difficult standoff. Like there are some people in situations where there is this standoff. So I see like trauma bonds in silence.
Or a minefield. I mean, I see it as an emotional minefield. That's another analogy with this, isn't it? As a child skipping through an emotional minefield.
Yeah.
Never knowing quite where you're going to put your foot down.
So we're getting a few thank yous coming in. Thank you all. Amazing show today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and vulnerability. Really powerful. Have you got a final word or idea that you'd like to share with us to set us up ready for the next show when we meet? Donna, what are your parting thoughts today?
Well, I mean, I didn't want to sort of like dominate this with adoption, but I know that it's brought out quite a lot of nuggets, hasn't it, that we can all relate to, and I'm really, really pleased about that. That's why I'm sort of happy to come back. I don't know. I mean, I don't know where I'm going to be in 2 weeks. I don't know when you're going to do this, but everything is just a journey right now. As I say, it's painfully beautiful. I look forward to coming here and continuing this and sharing, because this is it. This is the depth of what is this and why and where do we go and what do we do and for good with this, because it's all good. I think as we've all this all comes from a good place, but like you say, Carl, it's just been, you know, screwed up along the way. But actually, let's go back to the root, you know, before the frozen, before the good. It's all good, and
agreed.
I think tapping into that and exploring it, as you said, Jenny, it's exploring it to then be able to help ourselves, to then be able to help others. And that's what I feel. Wow, this is so deep. How many more people can I help with this in the adoptee arena? It's exciting. I just got chills thinking about it. But I also know I have still got work on myself, and doing things like this with you here, discussions like this is all part and parcel of that. So I have no real closing words other than that, really.
Awesome. They're opening words, those, aren't they? I
mean, the opening for the next one. There you go.
Yeah, lovely to meet you, and thank you for saying that. It is a process, isn't it? That's the thing.
And you know, I'll connect with both of you offline and find a time that works.
I'll just turn up whenever. I'll cancel everything just to be in on the next one.
It doesn't necessarily have to be in 2 weeks, but whenever works. Jenny, did you have a final or thought or realization? Or
I think if I go back to what I said at the beginning, which is like, it's how we deal with the suffering and how we kind of come out of that storm that people need to work on, really. And I think that's probably part of all of our role that's here, is to help people recognize where it comes from, how to deal with it and work through it, understand that the healing journey is like this and it's not like that, and that you always get moments where you might feel like you've stepped right back into that kind of trauma or that situation again. But there are definitely lots of things that people can do to help, whether it's physical or psychological or emotional pain or suffering. There is always something that somebody can do to help. And if anybody's feeling like they are really suffering, I think the most important thing is to try and find somebody that you can have a connection with that can help guide you through that suffering. And I think there's a lot of important work going on now, and it does seem to be like accelerating in time. And I do see that lots of people are healing right now. I think we're having this collective time. It's almost like, whether it's the celestial bodies or whatever it is, we've got this opportunity right now to heal generations. And by healing our generation, the ones below us and above us, we can heal future generations too. Or they don't even need to heal. They're already born in a right situation where they don't have to go through all that. I think we're breaking generational bonds and traumas that have gone for a long time right now.
Yeah, well
yes.
said. Well said.
Speaking of, thank you for that. And speaking of the trauma bonds, Gillian's also saying, well, actually, it was supposed to be trauma bonds, like an actual noun.
Works on so many levels.
Yeah, it really does. It works on so many levels, Gillian. But like trauma bonds, like the bonds that keep us locked in. I'm guessing that's what you mean by that, but I guess we can also find out more. May I just a little bit? Sorry, I'm fearing dominating this, but it's prompted so much, and connecting with what you both said, Donna and Jenny. It is really important to open up, reach out, and from with all this sort of talk of toxic masculinity and men aren't very good with their emotions, etc. There's all kinds of strands of truth in all of that, and like we've said before, it's a mess, and there are systemic problems, and I think it's a really great moment for men in this environment you talk of, Jenny, possibly where it's like things aren't working, and you're invited to heal, aren't you? You're invited to transform by the shit that happens to you, perhaps, and it's for a man to say I'm in a mess. And for other men to say, yes, you are. It's a really good moment. It's like, because for a man, it's like, I'm a mess and I shouldn't be. As a sort of, as that's, if there's toxic masculinity, that might be it. It's like, if the moment of honesty for all human beings, not just men, but for men in particular, like, I have messed up, I am in a mess. And for other men to say, it's probably not going to change, mate. It's this is the human condition, and it's okay to be a mess. What's important is what you're doing about it, and who you're reaching out to, and what you intend to achieve from this mess you now find yourself in. So yes, and for that's a great moment, isn't it? Like the honesty of like, I have really messed up, and I live in a messy world, and I have some responsibility for my bit and the world's bit, which might appeal to men as well to get this sorted out. And I see. At the top of the street, there's a man standing there. I'm in a mess, and that's a great almighty moment. And at the bottom of the street, he sees another world that he might want to be part of. And on the way is a bloody pub, supermarket, brothel,
strip
joint, exactly, spearmint rhino halfway down. And it's like, come on, let's just keep focused on that bit at the end. Here's something we can all do and get behind. And yes, you are a mess, and it's okay. We can do it together.
I love that. I think it's about being kind to ourselves through it all, and that's what I'm doing, because I've realised I'm addicted to things as well, and I beat myself up. I'm the biggest judge on myself, and a big part of this healing process is to acknowledge that what I'm doing to myself, and remind myself to be kind to myself, because we've been horrible to ourselves. A lot of us throughout this trauma, we've been really horrible to ourselves, We've been putting out what's good. We're good people to others and helping others, but I've been quite wicked to myself, you know, and it's time to stop that now.
I call it self-flagellation. It's like you're beating yourself up. So when you have that thought process about something and you start whacking yourself with it, it's exactly that. We should stop self-flagellating. It's not good.
Yes. We all do it. We're our biggest judges, aren't we, on ourselves? And I'm learning a lot about that and just how much I really do that. And it's a pattern that's really it's been going for decades, and it's running, and you don't even realize it sometimes, and you have to spot this. Yes, and it is, as I say, painfully beautiful, all of it.
Beautiful. That's so nice. Right. Thank you so much for your time, all of you today, and for everyone that's been listening in the chat room and watching us live, and also on playback. Thank you so much. I do think this is like a co-creation. You know, I don't think we could have the depth of this conversation were it not for other people miles away watching, and they're putting their emotions into this whole thing, you know, like quantum connections and stuff. I think it's a really important conversation that we're having. I also recognize that birthing is quite a strong theme, because Jenny, you mentioned miscarriages, that does bring up like a deep suffering and a pain, but there's also like abortions, which were spoken about today. And also I actually work with quite a few women who haven't been able to have a child, and so there's all sides of the whole motherhood issue and the being born issue. I think that's probably going to come into these subsequent conversations, as is, I think, the whole self-punishment and loving kindness, you know, practicing loving kindness to ourselves. So I really think this is going to go on and on. I just want to leave one last. Don't read those. Huh?
There are some that are not meant to be read out, so don't.
Okay. I'm just going to read this. This last one. I just want to leave this as a parting thought for everybody, and maybe as a precursor to the next show, from Sarah Taylor. And it's what ways can we take our suffering and show the alchemy it can create? So I just want to really end that there today. Thank you everyone for joining us. Please do watch out for when we go live again, and we'll carry on this conversation. And if you've got any comments or anything you'd like to reach out to Donna or Jenny or Carl or myself, if you look in the show notes, you'll find a way to contact each of us. So just thank you so very much for your beautiful authenticity, open hearts and everything, and your courage today. I just absolutely love you. Totally moved and touched and inspired today.
Thank you, Louisa.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you as well, Jenny. Thank you.
Yeah, you too, Donna.
Yeah, thank you.
It's me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll see you all soon on another show. Thanks so much today. Have a wonderful day ahead. Be kind to yourself, and let's connect again real soon. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.